Abbiamo la dottoressa Kelly Calzini, autrice di libri di testo in lingua, collaboratrice con Zanichelli e lavora per il Trinity College of London.
Thank you. Merci. Grazie. Grazie della presentazione. Bianca. Io sono bilingue, quindi per un incidente di nascita parlo perfettamente due lingue, sono stata fortunata. E negli anni 90, quando si è presentata l'opportunità di CLIL in Italia, ho subito colto l'occasione, perché io sono cresciuta in un ambiente bilingue e mi sono formata a Barcellona. La mia lingua CLIL era il francese e ho fatto la mia practice, my practitioner, in Lithuania, in Vilnius, quindi languaging, ok? E oggi abbiamo parlato molto in italiano, that's fine, but we can language, we can speak English. Is it okay? Je peux parler en français, mais ça fait beaucoup de temps maintenant. C'est mieux le français ou l'anglais? English. Sorry. English wins. We've lost our cultural identity as English speakers, but we now are all English users, yeah? Which has various aspects to that, but I won't go there today. So, Bianca asked me to get you all CLIL'd up. Are you all ready to run your CLIL classes? How many here this evening have already experienced conducting a CLIL module or a CLIL showers or, yeah? Hands up? Good. Okay. So, before I get you on task,
that depends a good deal on where you want to get to,
Di qua.
Vediamo se ci arriviamo.
Qua?
Dobbiamo spostarlo ancora un po'.
Qui.
Grazie. Sente?
So long as I get somewhere, Alice added as an explanation. Oh, you're sure to do that? Oh, you're sure to do that?
Oh, you're sure to do that, said the cat.
If you only walk long enough.
I'm not sure you... Can you hear me? Yeah? It's from Alice in Wonderland, and would you please tell me where I ought to go? And the cat says, that very much depends on where you want to go. Alice doesn't care, we do. We care where we want to go with CLIL. And we have to walk, and there's a long way to walk, okay? That was the idea of the introduction, but technology. What does your ideal CLIL class look like? Can you just think for a moment? Some of you have had experience with CLIL, running a CLIL class. Some of you are beginning. This year's going to be your first year running a CLIL class. In your ideal world, what would your CLIL class be like? What is happening in that classroom? tell the person next to you, and I'm going to give you 1 minute. Can you do it in a second language? Can you do it in French or in English, or as long as it's not your language? Yeah, tell her, tell your partner. Okay, some ideas? So, students are involved. So, we're co-creating in this classroom. Students and teachers together involved in creating something, in doing. Good? Good relationship with a second language teacher, because you're a generalist, you're a subject teacher. Topic. The topic or the subject is the focus of your lesson. Any other things happening in this CLIL classroom? Working in groups. Now, in my experience, in Italian state schools especially, group work is the most difficult thing to activate for lots of reasons. And I remember my first years as a lettrice in the Scuola Superiore in ITIS, where the headmaster went to the head of department, language department, and I worked in the south of Italy, one of my first jobs, and the preside went to the teacher, ma sta lettrice non è un poco pazza? Because I was creating, according to the dirigente, chaos. I was creating noise. But that noise was English noise. So, and if they're working in groups and co-creating, negotiating meaning and understanding, that is good teaching to me, okay? And that's what CLIL is. CLIL is nothing new. CLIL is good teaching practice. And if you're here today, I'm assuming you are the tip of the diamond, okay? You are good teachers. And that is what CLIL is really about. There are no rules, as David Marsh says. CLIL has many faces. You may be organizing CLIL showers, 10 minutes every day in your primary classroom, because if you're the generalist teacher, you have that opportunity, fantastic. 10 minutes every day, English showers. Or if you're in a scuola media, you might be working with modules, or maybe in intensive CLIL weeks, where you organize just 1 week, the whole school does CLIL. There are many ways to implement CLIL, and from the recent reports from the European Commission, I've learned that language teachers now are using CLIL, are using the CLIL approach. And one contradiction, I must admit, in the title of my talk, how to translate CLIL methodology in the classroom. CLIL does not have one methodology. There is no one approach. It all very much depends on your context, on your students. So the only rule that applies is that there is no rule. But we have principles. We have sound pedagogical principles. So where is your CLIL? If you're a language teacher, probably it's a more language-oriented CLIL. If you're a subject teacher or a generalist teacher, you're probably more towards a content-oriented CLIL. But it's not either or. It's a continuum. And there are a lot of elements and factors that happen and need to be considered along this continuum. You might be somewhere in between. During your training, you probably have come across frameworks for CLIL. One of the most renowned frameworks is this framework, the 4 C's. Are you familiar with the 4 C's? Now, I always thought that the 4 C's was a creation of an academic, Doe Coyle, who is a professor at the Aberdeen University. I had the pleasure of working with Doe, and I learned that this framework comes from teachers. It comes from the practitioners. So it's very interesting to get inside the 4 C's. It really helps you to plan. If you're at the beginning of CLIL, it really helps you to integrate what CLIL is all about. And CLIL is about learning. Not learning English, not learning a subject, learning as in education. It's about enabling students to deepen their learning. It's strengthening and deepening the conceptualizing. Okay, getting them to understand and evidencing that understanding through language. That is CLIL. That's what it's about. So what is your content? Does it mean if you're not teaching geography and English, you're not doing CLIL? Does it mean that if you're teaching poetry or listening to stories, you're not doing CLIL? Of course you are. Storytelling is a skill. Storytelling is content, it's subject. And it involves meaning making and understanding. And I think it was what Professor Sarah Joshua was saying. It's not about repeating the water cycle in English, yeah? But it's about meaning making. Then you have cognition, which is all about the processes involved in meaning making. And it's very easy to speak about Bloom's higher order thinking skills. We all know about them. Okay, we know about problem solving. But if they decontextualize, if they are not linked directly with the learning, it makes absolutely no sense to do them. Yeah? If you're teaching students how to write a report and involving those skills, those higher order thinking skills, but it's not relevant to the learning, it's not connected to the learning, the students cannot transfer that. So it's not going to be meaningful for them. Language learning. As language teachers, we're quite happy with that, yes? Language learning is easy, and we're quite happy with language progression. But crucially, in CLIL, it's language using that needs to be the focus. Using language to express what is being learnt. Through the words of the learners, through their own words, not my words, not your words, their words. Because that is how we make meaning, yeah? We understand the conceptualization. And that is key to CLIL. Languaging, language using. To language is a verb. And even if today you take that away, I have 3 takeaways. But if languaging is the only takeaway, I will be happy. It's really important. And this is where the language triptych comes in very handy. And it builds on what we've heard earlier this evening. When we're planning a CLIL lesson, we have 3 aspects: of, for, and through. The language of learning, that is what we're all good at. Yes? It's the language that enables the learner to access the subject. Okay? The language of learning is that language, that micro-language that you need to access the subject. So, for example, key vocabulary, key sentences, okay? It's a good starting point. The language for learning is all that language required for the activities, yeah? The classroom language, setting up a game. I remember in one of my CLIL classes, it was in the UK, and the language police were around. And the students were told, you must not speak English. Because if the police come in and hear you speak English, we're going to get a big fine. And I observed really interesting sign language there, because they didn't have the language for learning. So they were inventing a new sign language. They were miming, gesticulating. So that, when planning, whether you're a language teacher or a subject teacher, the language for learning is crucial. It's fine if they're discussing in their groups in Italian. That's what happens in the real world. But the teacher should try and maintain one language. And then, language through learning. That is where it becomes a bit more difficult. It's the language that emerges through the understanding, through the meaning making. And that is very difficult to anticipate. It's not predictable, okay? So that is where we co-construct with our learners. And we have to give them that language if we want them to voice what they're learning and how they're learning. Now, yeah, the fourth C is culture. And usually, we often give it the back seat. But culture is not intended as, you know, red buses and afternoon tea, if you're talking about it's about the different cultures at the macro level. And at the micro level, it's about the topics. Each topic has a culture of its own. So this framework helped my trainees, it helped me at the time, to know the what. Yes? And that gave us the elements to plan around. But it didn't give the how. The how is what happens in the classroom. How do we integrate the 4 C's? If we read the literature, in order to successfully implement CLIL, you need all 4. So how do we do that? And what are the challenges to sustain CLIL for us teachers and learners? So the quality of learning. Are students really learning? Are they learning to read and write? Is effective learning really happening? One of the risks is we lower the cognitive demand. That is not CLIL. We're not we can't, absolutely can't lower the cognitive demand. They may not have the language. So this is where we have to scaffold and come in and help. Measurement of achievement. We all know about PISA, and we all are in this business of quick fixes for marking. Assessment has to become part of the learning process, part of the student's journey. It can't just be a single event. Assessment has to be shared with the learners. And there's a really good video I'll show you. And of course, measurement of achievement and assessment is going to have an impact on teacher confidence and learning. Because if your class is doing well, as a teacher as well, I'm going to feel motivated to continue to go further. And the same happens with the learning. Until CLIL is considered a special thing, and we keep it in this bubble, which is a special project, it won't really take off. It won't happen. CLIL has to be across the curriculum. Very often in CLIL courses, I have teachers, but I haven't got a language teacher that will help me, or I haven't got a subject teacher. I'm on my own. That means we're keeping CLIL in a special bubble where it shouldn't be. CLIL is for everybody. It's not for the elite. And therefore, for me, the most obvious link are literacies. Okay? Integration in whole school literacy. And I don't just mean reading, writing, and counting. Yeah? It means a lot more, and we'll see in a minute. So, how do we go from the what to the how? The 4 C's does give us a guide about the CLIL components. They're the bricks, okay? And the mortar, which is the stuff that happens in your classroom. But what will make CLIL happen are the literacies. And that needs to be put at the core of CLIL. The literacies, pluriliteracies, are the cement. After the first training session in every CLIL course I run, some teachers will say, this is impossible in my school. No way. So it's about mindsets. Yes, okay. And I think it was mentioned earlier on, it does require a shift in mindset. The language teacher, especially, chronological grammar is no longer appropriate. It can't be appropriate in CLIL. You might well have to teach the past in the first grade, because in history, they're going to need the past. So we have to really change and rethink our syllabus. It can't just be grammar. I'm not anti-grammar. Grammar is necessary, but so are a lot of other elements. And so going back to Alice, this is impossible. And the Mad Hatter, only if you believe it is. I might be a Mad Hatter, but believe me, it is possible if we share growth principles. Language is our greatest tool, as well as a communication tool. All teachers are teachers of language. The more we learn, the more language we are going to need. And so you are all language teachers. CLIL is for all learners. And CLIL is not a monolingual class. Okay? It's not just English, it's not just French, it's a mixture of languages. And if in a group they're speaking French, Italian, to understand meaning, to make sense of what is the lesson, to understand the concepts, that is good, that's languaging. We must translanguage much more. E la cronologia grammaticale non può essere l'unico determinante per progredire in un programma CLIL. Okay? And if we get it right, as we've seen in earlier examples, CLIL is a very effective learning approach. So, we heard Mr. Serraggiotto talking about CALP and BICS and CALP, okay? And you have the basic classroom language and the academic proficiency. Now, I have a problem with that word, academic. I mean, I'm supposed to be an academic coordinator. academic. When you say that word, people think, oh, that you must speak a ridiculous language, and the only thing that excites you is the last journal from Eurydice on education or something. But really, a 5-year-old, the minute he puts his foot in a school, is academic. He's talking the language of academics for his cognitive development phase, but that is what we mean. Every language, every subject has its own academic language. Whether you're a 5-year-old or a 15-year-old or a 25-year-old, you're going to need the language to do maths. If you ask a scientist, what do you do? What's your job? You're very much likely to get the same answer if you ask a student in science. Okay, they do more or less the same things. I'm going to whiz through. How can we ensure quality subject or content learning, which is the focus in CLIL? Content comes first. Language is a servant of content. Academic literacies, okay? We need to plan the language for learning, not just of learning, but for learning and through learning. How do we know learners know? Languaging. We have to ask the learners what they've learned and how they've learned, and they need to be able to communicate that, to language that, in order to make understanding. What might an integrated approach look like? It's, again, across the curriculum. I encourage you to make CLIL available to all of the subjects throughout the school. Yes, I'm closing. So these, yeah. Just Veal's work. He did a lot of work in Language 1 on learning. And here is an example of science. Doing, organizing, explaining, arguing. Now this is an example for science, but the same example can be in history and maths. If you're 5-year-old, you do science, you organize the information, you can explain it at your cognitive level if you're at junior school. And small children are very good at arguing. If you have small children, you'll agree with me. And this is how you do CLIL, okay? The 4 C's helps you conceptualize. I'm going to have to stop, I know. Thank you.